This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. We're here in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, and I am joined by the one and only David Icke. And I must say, if this had been maybe 4 or even 5 years ago, this interview probably wouldn't be happening, because you weren't exactly the most welcomed man here in Canada back then. But this is then, that was then, this is now, and
I was welcome among people with a brain on active duty, or even half a brain cell on active duty. I was very, very welcome. It's the people that think they are liberal who are at the very epitome of it. And interestingly, what we're looking at now very topically is a massive expansion, not least in the United States, but across Europe and in the colleges and the universities, a massive expansion of the very phenomenon that I faced here in Vancouver many, many years ago. A long time ago, and it's the phenomenon of it's a mind game. Of course, apart from the few that are knowingly doing it, all these so-called progressive non-liberals that want to destroy freedom of speech, they're completely clueless and so self-obsessed and so narcissistic that they can't see that they're being used to destroy what they claim to stand for. Because what we're seeing now more and more, and like I say, it's just a massive expansion of what I faced here in Vancouver those years ago, is the use of the front called anti-fascism to act in blatantly fascistic ways to destroy freedom of speech. What I find interesting, because it's all a mind game, it's all a psychological game, is if you look what happened in Charlottesville, you had violence on both sides. Because it's my view that when you have extremes like so-called left and right, if you go far enough to the left and far enough to the right, you actually meet them both on the same ground because they're the same mentality, using a different label. So you add, of course, violence on both sides. If you notice that Donald Trump, who I have no brief for or support for whatsoever, but to be fair, when he said actually many sides were involved, he was absolutely jumped upon by the media and the progressives who said you can't say that. And even the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, came out and said you cannot equate anti-fascists with fascists. Well, if they both act the same, yes, you bloody can. And this is the mind game. The so-called far right in America are being tagged with campaigning for freedom of speech. The progressives and these violent thugs called Antifa are being equated with anti-hate. This is all a mind game. This is the mind game where they tag words and phrases to each other. So you do word association. You say one, you perceive the other. So what they're doing is tagging protest for freedom of speech to the far right and so-called white supremacists, so that anyone, and you, I'm sure, will have experienced this yourself among the progressive boys and girls, and I say boys and girls literally because they have not yet entered adulthood. The progressive boys and girls in Vancouver, you will, I'm sure, have faced the same thing. It means that anyone who is as far like me from the far right as you can imagine are still tagged with far right. Why? Because we're demanding freedom of speech. You know, oh, you're far right then. Because these people, you know, they are so deep in the program of idiocy. They have no capacity for free thought. So their leaders, like these Antifa leaders, and I've never seen one of them that could string two words together made any sense. But these Antifa leaders, they say something, and you know, and because they've got no capacity for free thought to say, well, hold on a minute, we're anti-hate, right? Yeah. So why do we act in such a hateful way? Why do we have hate on our faces when we're campaigning? I thought we were anti-hate. Oh, and we're pro-diversity, right? Well, yeah, we are. Well, why are we destroying it by saying you can speak but you can't? You know, we're dealing with a deep psychological program, collective program, that is turning people who perceive themselves as liberal, when that's the last thing they are, and call themselves anti-fascists, to do the work of the very establishment they claim to oppose by destroying the ability of people to have freedom of speech, to challenge that very establishment. It's a joke, and we need to address this, because this Antifa operation is a proxy army by the elite and the establishment to destroy freedom of speech and destroy the ability to expose that elite and that establishment.
Now, as far as this false left-right paradigm goes, which I've learned a great deal about from you over the years, it seems that the oligarchy are using this divide and conquer tactic, and I want to get your views on what exactly does the conquer part entail? What is the end game for them when it comes to dividing people? Because I thought it was all about unity. They want a one world government, a one world religion, a one world cash system. So is the conquer part unity under their rule, or how do you see them conquering people by dividing them?
Oh, well, because if you take the situation that I've just described, they're using this Antifa, this black bloc, this progressive self-deception to destroy the ability of anyone that does not think like they do, and it doesn't take much expansion of consciousness to think beyond where they do. Anyone that doesn't think like they do is to be silenced. And what this is doing, think George Orwell, think newspeak, the control of the language, so lots and lots of words where you could actually express your thoughts and express your opinions were destroyed and taken out and replaced by newspeak being words that basically didn't say anything. Now, I've just described political correctness. Now let's look at who polices political correctness. The same people I'm talking about, the Antifa stroke progressive fascistic networks around the world. So they're using them to squeeze, because they believe in diversity, the ability of people to say, discuss, believe, think anything outside of the narrow band of perception that this establishment, this elite, wants people to believe and wants people to perceive. That's what's happening. So what's happening is you've got diversity and you've got different views. You squeeze it and you squeeze it and you squeeze it until you've got only one narrow band of opinion, one narrow band of perception that is acceptable. Now you've got your unity. But it's a unity within this narrow band of what you're allowed to think, say, and do. That's what we're seeing. And people outside of that, who are challenging that. Some of them may be of what you call the far right. Vast numbers of them, absolutely nothing of the kind, who are saying, hold on a minute, the world's being taken over by political correctness. We can't say anything anymore, and soon it will be think because of the technology they have. They have to be demonized, which is why I said earlier they're equating far right with demands for freedom of speech. Oh, we should have freedom of speech. Oh, you're far right, yeah. This is what they're doing. And we need to stand up to it and not accept it. Because if we go on accepting it, then there'll be no freedom left in this world in a very, very short time. This is not sometime over the rainbow, eventually, when my grandchildren are old men and women. No, this is now it's happening. We're talking a few years hence that this will come in, unless some... more people grow a backbone.
Well, on that note, solution-wise, where do we need to go from here? How can people break free from this conditioning, essentially, and not be subjected to this false left-right paradigm? What are the ways to break free from this control?
Well, they have to get informed for a start. I mean, you talk to your run-of-the-mill so-called anti-liberal progressive. Their knowledge of the world and world events is stunningly non-existent, which makes them so easy to manipulate and direct. But it's about removing the cause of the problem. I mean, we haven't got the time here to go into all the different levels of what we need to turn this around. But one of them is, one foundation part of it is, let's look at what the cause of the problem is. Instead of finding a solution to it, let's remove the cause of the problem. Now, if you take the destruction of freedom of speech, it's people being intimidated into staying silent about what they really believe. That's the problem, right? It's not the intimidators that ultimately destroy freedom of speech. It's the intimidated. So we cease to be the intimidated. We speak our truth, and if people don't like it, well, they can do the other thing. And if people around say, "I'm not being your friend anymore, you're not saying what I believe," well, bugger off then. What are you doing in my life if you haven't got the respect for what I feel and what I think? And so I've just got a book coming out in November, which I've just finished. And instead of running away, I put me spikes on. I put me spikes on, and the gun goes off, and I run at all these taboos. A lot of people of the kind that I'm talking about are absolutely going to go ape shite about it. But a lot of people who are sick and tired of being intimidated, who are sick and tired of being told what to think and what to do and what they can believe and what they can't believe, they're going to be punched in the air. Because this is what we need to do. Stop running away. Stop self-censoring. Speak your truth. Because these violent thugs who haven't got two brain cells to rub together, they are very tiny in number compared with those who are being intimidated into silence. It's time to reverse that. They can't silence the vast majority unless the vast majority acquiesce with it. And it's time to stop. Otherwise, the time to stop will be past.
So essentially global non-compliance, like just stepping out of the system or just saying, I'm going to have nothing to do with this no longer. Not fighting it, but just not having anything to do with it, right?
Well, the worst you can do is to resist it. I mean, this is the whole idea of the so-called left, or we're the resistance. What happens when you resist something is you create an energetic basically an electrical circuit with it, and both the resisted and the resistance empower each other. It's literally like a standing wave or an electrical circuit. Instead of fighting these people and resisting the tyranny, we just don't do what the tyranny wants. I mean, there's many levels to this, which I'll go into in the books, but we don't do what the tyranny wants. The tyranny wants us to self-censor. That is the most sinister part of human control and the destruction of freedom of speech. Because when you self-censor, there is no debate. Why is this being censored? Explain to me. Justify it. No. There's just no discussion. You just don't say it or do it anymore. And this is why, this is a point that I would relate to this. People, they talk about Edward Snowden and these great revelations about mass surveillance. And it's good that it comes out and people can see it who are not aware of the scale of it. But let's kid ourselves for a second that the establishment and the elite are not quite happy for it to come out. Why? Because surveys have shown again and again that if people think they are under surveillance, they self-censor. So it's all part of the mind game. We have to get streetwise to the mind game, because that's what it is in the end. The number of people that are directing where this world is going is a tiny number compared with the 7.5 billion currently are being directed and manipulated. They can't do it physically. They've got to do it by hijacking the perceptions of the target population, and one of the perceptions is, oh, I better not say anything. What's going to happen? Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't say anything, what's going to happen? You ain't going to be able to say anything at all outside of that narrow band of acceptability. I mean, look at George Orwell, 1984. Look at Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. They were not coming purely from their imagination. They knew each other. I mean, Huxley taught Orwell French at the elite Eton College in Britain, where the royal children go. They were coming from an understanding of what this projected agenda was. And you look at 1984 and what's happening now with, in 1984, the party ruled. No one could say anything that criticized the party. We're in it. We're living it. Look at it. But these progressives are so obsessed with their own self-purity, so obsessed with their look at my heart on my sleeve, ain't it nice? Look. No, it's not nice. I'll tell you why it's not nice. Because while you are being self-obsessed about your own self-purity, you are destroying the freedom of speech for everyone else. And I, for one, am not frickin' having it.
And they don't seem to even be capable of actually having a rational discussion about things without just descending into violence.
Listen, if you have no case to defend, and you know that 3 questions into any debate, your jaw is going to be open and your capacity to respond is going to be long past, are you going to debate with people? No, these people don't want to debate. People who've tried to stop my events, take my freedom of speech away, have been given the opportunity to debate with me on the radio. They all refuse, because they have no foundation for what they are doing, because what they are doing is the opposite of what they claim to be doing. You can take that apart in no time. So they don't want to debate. It's the last thing they want to do. Because this is the point. As I've been saying a lot recently, we live in a post-fact society. It's not about fact anymore. And what is debate about? It's about debating fact. Proper rational debates about debating fact. This is not about fact anymore. This is the post-fact society. It's about slogans, it's about violence, and it's about intimidation. Facts don't matter. It doesn't matter if what you're saying can be justified and supported by endless facts. That not interested. If it's not what they think or what they want other people to think, then they'll just try to shut you down, even though the facts speak for themselves.
Well, just like in 1984, they tried to memory hole the facts, and we need to counter that by putting out our own versions of, call it propaganda if you want. We got to counter the propaganda, and books is a great way to do that. Where people who are just learning about this now, tell us about where they can get your new book to counter this information if you want to learn how to properly debate these people.
Well, I tell you what, it does counter their information, and it does it with facts. It's coming out in November. It will come out in England first, and then it will be in Canada. You'll be able to get it through my website immediately. It comes out in November rather. It's being printed in October. It's called Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told. And it's going to cause a storm. It's going to get me a lot of abuse from those that don't like freedom of speech and don't like facts. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not, what's good about it? I'm looking forward to it. Bring it on, because like I say, we have got to start running at this and not run away. And the thing you said there about the memory hole, if you look at what's happening on the internet now, which the internet has come from military technology. It's come out of an organization, one of the most sinister, if not the most sinister on earth, called DARPA, the technological development arm of the Pentagon. And it's gradually, and then ever more quickly, taken control of the flow of information through the search engines like Google and through social media like Facebook, both ultimately controlled by the same force. And what is happening now is things like Facebook are censoring information, and doing it now openly. We're censoring things like so-called conspiracy theories, which invariably turn out to be true. So have Google and YouTube, a YouTube owned by Google. And they are now losing information that they don't want the public to see from the search engine. It's still there, but you can't find it. This is the memory hole. We now have efforts to bring in legislation in the United States to delete from the internet and the search engines anything that, in one bill's wording, that is no longer deemed relevant. What do you mean relevant? So someone who died 100 years ago and there was an autobiography about him, well, he's dead now. I mean, it's no longer relevant. Get rid of it. This is the extremes to which we have reached. And in Europe, in the European Union, some years ago now, judges, just 3 judges in the entire hundreds of millions of people European Union, decided that if people wanted to lose references to them in Google, etc., then they could apply to Google and Google would have to do it. And so that's another part of the memory hole. And so there's this war on the alternative media. There's a war to stop it making a living from it via advertising, which Google and YouTube own. Google owned YouTube are shutting down. It's so blatant. And we are, to be frank, in a little window now where we decide the fate. We decide our own fate. We decide the fate of humanity. Because not too long from now, if we go on taking this stuff and allow it to unfold, and we're intimidated by these morons who will be also enslaved by what they're helping to bring in, then there will be no freedom in this world. We will live in Orwell's world in its entirety no more than a decade from now. No more than a decade from now, maybe 15 years.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think we're at a crucial fork in the road kind of moment where I want to be the kind of person who can look back and say to my grandchildren that, I was on the right side of history. When things went down, I was on the right side, and now's the time to get involved if you want to be on the right side. So once again, thank you so much for talking to us. We'll have all the links in the description, and enjoy the rest of your tour here in